Thank you, Clerk. We have quorum, so we're now calling the meeting to order, and we're going to open a public session. So I'm going to advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode, and that all devices must be muted. It's not permissible to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. Are there any apologies for today's meeting, Clerk?
No, just Michelle.
Okay, so I know due to the weather in particular that some people are running late and may have one or two joined via Zoom. However, we're expecting all members here. Okay, and thanks Eve for joining via Zoom. Okay, declarations of interest. So I'd remind members of the responsibility to declare any interest in any of the items under discussion today. So do any members have any interest that they want to declare?
Item 5, matters arising in relation to the farm sustainability payment of declaring up just as a small farm business owner.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Item number 3 then is Chairperson's business. Item number 1, refer you to page 6 of the pack, to correspondence from the Minister dated the 6th of March regarding his intention to launch a 12-week public consultation on rural NI, our new approach 2026 to 2041. The committee will be updated on developments in due course, and I know that members will be particularly interested in that. Any comments you content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 2, refer to page 7 of the pack, to correspondence dated the 9th of March from an individual regarding asbestos contamination at the former Ulster Weaver site on Malden/Meredy Street, Belfast. Members will recall that the Minister touched on this issue last week during his evidence session. The individual points out that in their view the NIEA, as the statutory regulator, has a duty to ensure landowners comply with relevant legislation, and has queried if proactive monitoring and enforcement has been carried out, and requests that the committee puts questions to the Minister on the matter. As you know, we do not deal with individual matters. However, if there is a wider matter of environmental health in the area that you wish to seek clarity on from the Minister, or indeed Belfast City Council in this instance, I'm content that we write or look at other proposals. Are you content with that approach, members? That we seek clarity from the Minister and Belfast City Council in relation to this. Thank you. Okay, item number 3, members, are referred to page 4 of table papers, to correspondence from the Department providing details on Invest NI CBAM engagement events that officials referred to at our meeting on Monday. The remaining sessions in Newry, Londonderry and Ballymena are planned to help NI business prepare for the EU CBAM and the NI CBAM. There is also step-by-step guidance and toolkit for navigating CBAM on Invest NI's website. Members, have you any comments you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Item number 4, the second stage of Declan's ANC bill is scheduled for Monday 23rd of March. So in the usual run of things, Declan would have been briefing us on the 19th of March so that the committee can discuss and agree or not the principles of the bill. However, I am unable to chair the meeting on the 19th, so Declan, you're going to be in the chair. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask a favour of the committee, if that's okay, that we hold an extra, short short meeting on Monday. The 16th of March was his next Monday, guys. And it would be at 10 a.m. if that's possible, possibly 15:15. There is a family farm day run by the UFU here at 11:30 that kicks off, and it's a drop-in. So if we could aim for a 10 a.m. start on Monday to give Declan a fair chance to brief the committee. Is that okay? Okay, members, and we'll roll out with that with another reminder to members, if that's all right, just to ensure that and get a room booked. Yep. Okay.
It's ready booked.
Ready booked. Excellent. Okay. So, item number 5 then. Committee for Infrastructure have confirmed joining us for a concurrent meeting on the 21st of April, which is a Tuesday, to hear from NI Water and a statutory plan and consultation forum, members. So that's a date for your diaries after Easter. And moving back to agenda item 4 then, which is the minutes of the March the 5th meeting. So members, the draft minutes of the meeting on the 5th of March are at page 21 of your pack. If you have any comments, are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if you are, I will sign them and they will be published on the website. Okay, thank you, members. And I also refer you to the draft minutes for a meeting on the 9th of March similarly. They're at page 6 of table papers. If you have any comments, please make them. If not, and you're content, then I will sign them and they will be published on the website. Okay, thank you for that, members. Okay, agenda item 5 then, matters arising. Members are referred to page 35 of the pack to a response from the Department dated the 4th of March regarding the update on the Fruit and Vegetables Aid Scheme. Members will recall we considered the matter at our meeting on the 19th of February and requested further detail on the progress of the successor scheme, and that was part of our deliberations previously. The department states that due to its current commitments in rolling out the horticulture pilot scheme, work on the FEAS successor scheme is expected to start later this year. In the meantime, the department is currently working on the governance structure for the successor and will engage with stakeholders and the committee on this in due course. Have any comments on that at this stage? Are you content to note? Content to note. Thank you, members. Matters arising number 2. I refer you to page 39 of the pack to correspondence from the department dated the 9th of March regarding the Farm Sustainability FSP entitlement. Following our meeting on the 26th of February, we wrote to the department asking if it would consider reviewing the Farm Sustainability Transitional Payment Provision Regulations Northern Ireland 2025, and that was in the SR. Following our meeting on the 26th of February, members, the response states that despite the intention of the Young Farmers Payment Scheme and the Regional Reserve to increase the number of young farmers who were head of holding, this was not achieved and generational renewal was not delivered. It is anticipated that the Farming for Generations scheme will achieve this while not focusing purely on financial incentives. The response also states that in relation to the pilot Farming for the Generations scheme due to end in March, lessons from the previous land mobility scheme are being examined and options to extend the land mobility related element are being considered. New entrants and young farmers are not excluded from the FSP scheme and retain the right to buy or lease entitlements to allow them to access payments. The department also states that the FSP scheme will continue in line with the Farm Sustainability Transitional Provisions Regulations Northern Ireland 2025 and the Farm Sustainability Payment Scheme Eligibility, etc. Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. Any comments on that? I know you'd brought up that piece.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, so just in the correspondence there appears to be a contradiction between the reported increase in the uptake of the Young Farmers Scheme in 2025 and the claim that the average age of farmers has not changed. So it seems contradictory, as I said, to say that there was an increase and then also to say that there's been no change. So I would like that to be explained.
Simplified?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that's fair because I think the point that you guys were making then in regard to that, they're now claiming that it didn't work, but okay. Fine. Now, would that be happy enough for that, Clerk? We're looking at the figures for that.
Yeah, and come
side
back
by,
to
side by side figures, basically.
Yeah.
of the age of farmers or the age. No.
I think clarity on the whole lot because it is based on the information that's been given to us. It contradicts itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that an explanation needs to be given there in that case.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that.
Fair enough. I'm just not.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. You're not a young farmer.
I wish. You're as young as you, rather.
I think there's only a couple of months between us, to be fair.
Wish you hey, Declan.
All right, okay. There's some good work in that, and the Ulster Farmers, Young Ulster Farmers Club and the UFU representation has obviously been reflected in the response from the department in regard to the land mobility scheme. So looking at that, which is good work, members. Okay, item number 3 then, on page 43 of the pack of correspondence dated the 9th of March from the Minister regarding our concerns at the levels of littering and fly tipping across rural areas. I think this was brought up by Michelle McIlvaine actually. The issue was raised in any other business and we agreed to write to the Minister, the UFU and all other local councils on the matter. We will come to UFU's response in a moment. The Minister states that he is committed to dealing with the issue using a combined approach of legislation, education and enforcement. This includes, number 1, the increase of the maximum fixed penalty notice that councils can set for littering offences from £80 to £200, the carrier bag levy, funding for environmental education and litter awareness programmes, work towards launching a deposit return scheme in October 2027, a proposed plastic pollution plan for Northern Ireland and the development of Northern Ireland's first litter strategy, and the introduction of the fly tipping protocol, providing clarity on the roles and responsibilities of local councils and the NIEA. The Minister also highlights the challenges posed due to limited resources to track fly tipping trends and that NIEA is planning to recruit an analyst to improve the collation of data and identification of threats and trends. So members, have you any comments on that? Yep.
Yeah, just I suppose coming from, from council there the last few months, it is an issue, but I can see why local councils don't. Well, they maybe do hold the information, but it's not something they maybe want to overly publicise, because when there is an incidence of fly tipping, often a council will move quite quickly to resolve the issue. But in publicising that, then you're sending a message that council will deal with fly tipping, and people have seen it many times where they could be within a mile of a recycling centre and it's tipped over the hedge, and then, you know, so it's sort of, it's a vicious circle, because the more publicity in terms of dealing with fly tipping, the more people realise council deal with fly tipping and the thing's perpetuated. So it is a very challenging area, and it isn't one that really benefits from a lot of publicity in my view, because we have had issues with tires especially repeatedly dumped in one location and they're removed by council and they're dumped again, and for whoever's doing it, it's a very handy method of disposal, and that's the difficulty with this. It is an educational piece probably for younger people up, and we'll maybe see the results of it in years to come, but at the same time it can't be ignored either. Do you know what I mean? It needs tidied up, but it's just that it's breaking out of that circle. It's very hard to do.
Totally. No, I think we keep a very, in the minister's response, the department's response, if you like, they've set out a series of matters that will possibly look at it. The introduction of the fly tipping protocol would be interesting, because I think that clarity around whose responsibility and where, because land ownership obviously comes into this too. Maybe it's housing executive land, sometimes it's council land, and you know the difficulties we run into trying to get grass cut and whose responsibility that can be too. So, and I think the fly tipping also tips into that. Any other comments on that one, members?
Other than Chair, if I may, and take the points that Gareth made there, I probably get the same thing. A particular problem where urban meets rural, and we have the rural area beginning on the end of a built-up area. It's prevalent in my constituency at times, but it's something I'm keen to get a progress report on at some point, and if the protocol or presentation on the protocol is the way to do that, then I'm happy enough.
Okay. Appreciate that, John. Yeah. Happy enough, Clerk? Okay, thank you. Item number 4, then, members, on the same topic, referred to page 49 of the pact, correspondence dated the 9th of March from the UFU regarding the impact of littering and fly tipping on the farming community. The response highlights that it is difficult to assess the full extent of the issue due to gaps in official reporting on private as opposed to public land, and outlines the extent and nature of the issue in terms of the financial burden, animal welfare risks and enforcement gaps. In addition, the UFU also details policy recommendations, including improved reporting, clear responsibility, use of technology and public awareness. This could probably fit in well with the fly tipping protocol that the department have alluded to. Have you any comments to make? Are you content to wait until we receive responses from the councils, which I think will be key to this, before agreeing any further action? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I refer you to page 56 of the pact of correspondence dated the 9th of March from the Bonds Glen Environmental Group, requesting the opportunity to brief the committee. Members will recall we considered correspondence on the 26th of February from the chair of the group regarding what he described as the destruction of Sperrin AONB and Special Area of Conservation. We agreed to write to the department to request further clarity from the NIEA on the situation, also details regarding engagement on the matter with Derry and Strabane District Council. Members, have you any comments, or will we consider the matter for a future meeting once we have all the responses before us? Happy to discuss when we have all the details. I think that's wise. Okay, thank you, members. Item number 6 then, I refer you to page 63 of the pact of correspondence dated the 9th of March from the TST group, outlining its concerns regarding the UK ETS extension to GB-NI ferry routes. Members, the clerk alerted us to this correspondence being in the pact when it went out on Monday, so we were aware of it before the debate. Have you any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you, members. Page 65 of the pact, correspondence dated 9th of March from the UKA Chamber of Shipping, further outlining its concerns regarding that same piece of work. The clerk also alerted us to this correspondence being in the pact, went out on Monday, so we were aware of it before the debate. Are you content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 8, I also refer you to page 12 of the table papers to further correspondence from the UK Chamber of Shipping regarding the SI in response to evidence from officials at Monday's meeting. The members received a copy of this from the UK Chamber of Shipping by email on Monday afternoon in advance of the debate, and included a copy of a letter issued from the CBI in May 2025 to the EU setting out high-level principles ahead of last year's EU-UK summit. Any comments? You content to note? I think it was picked up in the meeting in terms of veracity of talking about information that wasn't actually in front of us. So that showed to me that the members of the committee were on their toes, and that's always useful, regardless of the angle of the debate.
Although, Chair, we should probably record here, and I'm happy to be attributed to me, that the committee has not sought the views of those bodies mentioned, where there's alleged contradictory information. The committee has not availed of any opportunity to seek clarification of that.
To be fair, it couldn't, John, but the vote was within 24 hours of it being brought up.
I'm aware, but there were comments made at committee that we had not received any presentation from those people, and I'm putting on record, nor did we seek one.
No, because it was only brought. Yes, that's fair. But on
well,
both
Chair,
on
we're
both
getting
on both
into-
on both counts, John, it was brought up in the Monday's unusual committee meeting 24 hours before. So it was introduced at that point, and there wouldn't have been any facility for that. I accept your point that it was made.
Sure,
It was made.
and I'm keen to absolutely clarify. Email is fairly instant.
Okay. There's nothing really an action of it, Tom.
Chair, this is a different issue now. I just want to, is it okay to go with this now? I just want to bring you back to the Bonds Glen issue where they've requested a meeting before committee. Is that, what are we doing with that?
Yeah.
So could you go with that again for the clerk
Okay,
in
I
case we
didn't
need
hear
to,
that.
in case there's an action out of the back of it?
Sorry?
Can you go over that again just for the clerk's
Right.
benefit?
Chair, Tom, sorry, I just didn't hear you. Yeah.
Back to the Bonds Glen issue.
Yes.
The chairman of the group has requested a meeting
Yep.
before committee. Has that been will that be put into the system?
So it's there. What we said was we would come back to it when we get more information.
Because we've
But
written
it's-
to
it's-
NIEA
We need more information.
Sorry,
You're
it's
waiting
fine.
information
Yeah.
from them first of all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not gone. It's
No, that's
just
okay.
paused. Yeah.
That's all right, not a problem, thanks.
Is that a constituency one then for you? Is it?
It's not, no, it's not the south side, my
Oh,
constituency.
is it?
Yes.
Is that a Gareth Wilson?
Conservation,
Is that a
well,
Gareth
back
Wilson
up
type?
on
The south side is,
All right, no problem. Thank you.
not much outside of that.
Well, your constituency is sizable. I've had foot in one, your constituent in another at the same time. It's quite impressive. Okay. All right, members staying. So that's that there. Okay, we're on agenda item 6 now then. And that is the dilapidation bill, deliberations and formal decision making clause by clause. So members, today we are still in deliberations, but a new phase where hopefully we will start to move towards making some informal decisions on our agreement or otherwise with each clause. And if we wish to propose any amendments, I will be requesting that we move into closed session for those discussions. Members, you've been provided with papers for this item. I will only highlight a few of them as the remainder have been in our packs each week. However, I have the page numbers in front of me should anyone need them. So in the pack, we have the deliberations table updated after last week's meeting, which starts at page 69. The department's response dated the 9th of March to queries raised during deliberations on the 26th of February. Those start at page 94. The bill as introduced starting at page 98. The explanatory and financial memorandum starting at page 126, and the BCNI summary of meetings with DAERA in the table starting at page 21. The rest of them are there.
Check they have.
Yes.
And I'll find that because we're going to need to. Yeah.
The deliberations papers, members, if you just could clarify that you have those. They're on page 69 of your pack, of your main pack, so you will need to refer to them. Yep. Okay. I do have mine open. I have to check for myself too before we go any further. Yeah. No, it's the wrong papers.
It's tabled. It's in the
There we
main
go.
pack. Yeah.
That's it.
Order and table.
All right, members. Members, are we now in agreement to proceed? Yeah. So before we move into closed session, I'm going to welcome our bill official, Owen and Glenda. And Glenda's our senior assistant clerk who's predominantly working on the bill. Members, I'm going to now ask your agreement to move into closed session for this part. We will then return to public session, and the officials will be available for any questions we wish to put them in this closed session. Have your permission, members? Yep. Okay, thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Thank you. Okay, members, thank you for your attitude and your diligence in regard to the closed sessions on the dilapidation bill. I'm just going to ask the clerk to read into the record a brief on the discussions, please.
Chair members, we covered clauses 1 to 3 in some considerable detail of discussion regarding low-level dilapidation, and there was discussions around if definitions became more prescriptive, we potentially could be limiting the councils rather than assisting them, and that DARE are looking at putting examples in the statutory guidance for that. So we will be getting response from that, the actions out of the council meetings, and actually considering in detail how to define it could be quite difficult, as it may even differ from place to place, a village or a town. So DARE are going to be coming back to us on all that, the outworkings of the council meeting. Councils will be able to, under the guidance, be able to decide what is detrimental to amenity, and this may be dependent on where the detriment is situated. We discussed the serving of the maintenance notice and the terms may or must in clause 1.1. If it became mandatory to act, then you would have to put definitions on the face of the bill. So that would be a significant policy change, and potentially the Minister would have to take such a policy change back to the executive, but the officials can maybe confirm that. We referred to looking at some of the other legislation that might be useful to look at, such as the high hedges legislation. There may be aspects of that we could review, and the Bill Office will be doing that for us. The lodging of the appeal that we discussed in clauses 1 to 3, that in clause 2, I think there was confirmation from the Bill Office that you just need to lodge your appeal within the 28 days. It's not that the whole appeal will take place in that time. And we kept sort of coming back to the issue that we were discussing the low-level dilapidation here, and the guidance has templates for the maintenance notices. The Bill Office is going to look at the appeal structure in councils for us, just to cover that off. Then at clause 3 we discussed the link to clause 19 regarding the fixed penalty notice, and considered that we would probably discuss the fixed penalty notice more when we got to clause 19. In terms of clause 4, we know that DARE officials are consulting further with HED regarding, and are going to supply an update to committee on the outcomes of those discussions. I'm not sure, I don't think we've had that outcome yet. Sorry, excuse me, just going on here. We discussed the issue of that the committee has raised before regarding there being a minimum number of directors in place before a notice can be issued, and that is regarding when a building is owned by a group, potentially of trustees or directors, and we discussed the concern over that sufficient minimum number of directors, and I think we've got that on a list of questions to come to you with shortly. Let me see if I wrote anything else down. Chair, I think that's, as I say, most of the discussion was on clauses 1 to 3.
Okay.
But we did discuss
charges.
Oh yes, there was, I think we're going to ask questions on that anyway. There was some concern about if a notice is laid under clause 4, where is it recorded? Where would it be picked up if someone is looking to buy a property?
Yeah.
That's sufficient, yes.
Members content with the detailer. So there was agreement in regard to clauses 1 to 3 that we would move beyond that today and engage the officials in and around clause 4 and seek some clarity on a couple of items. I'm going to get the ball rolling if that's okay. So it just occurred to me, and I'm looking for some assurance, and it probably exists, but because we're refining it into a single bill, if a notice is put on a building, but subsequently someone seeks to buy that building whilst the notice is on it, is that notice on a register somewhere that is picked up in a standard legal search?
Yes, that would be on the statutory charges register.
That's it, and that's commonly picked up at the moment. That's a standing point. And
Yeah, that would
doesn't
be
change
if
pay.
a solicitor's doing a search. That would be, if you have a mortgage or a fixed loan,
Yeah. Is that something that happens at the moment if the council issue a notice for demolition or remedial works, that's on that statutory charge at the moment on that list, and then through a search by a solicitor, a purchaser, that is already picked up, so it's not new or novel?
I couldn't say for sure if that's currently the process, but we have asked for some legal advice around that in terms of how this process would actually play out in practice.
And obviously the scenario that's in about in my head is that if someone is issued with a notice on a building which is saleable for whatever reason, because of its location, for instance, that a purchaser would be entitled to that information, just and ensure that that is captured here. So that's what clause 12 or something, is that where it is picked up? Because we looked at that, just wanted confirmation and understanding of what that statutory charge and discharge of that is.
That's whenever the dilapidation notice is registered, if council aren't going to do any work and it's there as a, if another person's going to come and buy, they'll know that work has to be done. Obviously, the price of the property would be reflected.
Yeah. And people can pay what they want to pay, but a standard search will pick that up. Okay, thank you. That's good. John, did you have a point on this then? Anything you need to clarify? No, wasn't to do with clause 4. No.
That's the one on the directors.
The director's piece, yeah.
Yeah, I've just, and apologies if I haven't raised this before, but we raised the issue of trustees, some of whom may be deceased, on a previous meeting, and that one didn't come from me. But I'm just noticing the bit about the sufficient minimum number of directors in place before issuing a notice. Is that the potential for a loophole? If trustees own a property, surely they could make sure they always had below the minimum number of directors if they thought the property was falling into disrepair, especially in a situation where they may also be fully aware that it might appreciate in value over a number of years. They could just let it sit there.
We have asked a number of questions in relation to, to the trustees and the limited company scenario that we discussed before. That's one of the things we've gone to OLC about.
Because trustees of any organisation will be made fully aware of their responsibilities, and it's not our job to try and excuse them from those responsibilities, whether the numbers are down or up. But I see potential there for that to be exploited, albeit probably in very small numbers and on rare occasions, but it's one I would probably prefer to avoid if we can. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Enough, John. Okay, there was one other point then, and we're just looking to see if you had an update on any discussions with HED in this regard and around heritage buildings, and if there's an update yet on that.
We have received a response, but it's basically to say they're going to get back to us in the near future. So yeah, that's where we're at. So we should
give them a 28-day notice with a fine not exceeding level 4, with summary conviction of nothing less than 2 years in jail. But we do want a response from them. You would anticipate a response next week.
Yep.
And that would be useful. That would be really good. Okay. Members, any other queries or questions in regard to any of our deliberations today? Obviously, you can. We covered clauses 1 to 6. It was clause 4, which was of particular interest to us today. Members content? Yep. Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Same time, same
Same
place.
time, same place. All right, members, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, okay. Thank you, members.
Ready?
Okay, members. Agenda item 7 then is the departmental oral evidence session, and it's the departmental response to the independent review of environmental governance in Northern Ireland final report. So I refer you to the briefing paper, which starts at page 516 of your pack, outlining a summary of progress made to date. The department's categorisation of the 32 recommendations are proposed actions, and I'm going to welcome the officials to brief the committee. We have Shane Doris, the Director of Environmental Resource Policy, and Liz Loughran, the Director of Natural Environment for NIEA. Hello, folks, and just do please feel free to get comfortable before you give us your brief.
Oh, that's better.
Okay, remember, just remind page 516 of your pack. Just pop it up here. Okay. When you're ready, if you want to brief the committee, please feel free.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the introduction, and also I'd like to thank you, Deputy Chair, and all committee members for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the review of environmental governance in Northern Ireland. You will be aware an independent review of environmental governance in Northern Ireland was commissioned by the Minister in November 2024 to provide an evidence-based assessment of the current governance arrangements and practical recommendations for improvement. The panel was led by Dr Vivian Gravy of Queen's University and supported by Diane Ruddock, retired from the National Trust, and John McAllister of UFU. A stakeholder reference group was established in January 2025, and it supported the panel throughout the review. Membership was taken from a diverse range of stakeholders across agriculture and the environment. Following a call for evidence, which received 590 responses, 3 public events and substantial stakeholder engagement with regulators and interest parties across the UK and Ireland over a 9-month period, the independent panel published their final report on the 21st of October 2025, a copy of which was provided to the committee at that date. The final report sets out 32 recommendations across the areas of policy, delivery and governance, and these were categorised by the panel under 4 themes: clarity and coherence, meaningful independence, better compliance, transparency and accountability. The central recommendation within the final report was that an independent environmental protection agency should be established as a non-departmental body of DAERA, and Minister Muir has been clear that he supports this proposal. Members will also be aware that Minister Muir brought forward a paper to the Executive seeking agreement in principle to move forward with establishing a new independent EPA in Northern Ireland. Creating a new independent EPA would of course have financial, legislative and staffing implications, all of which would need to be fully established. That process itself requires a significant resource commitment, and therefore to avoid nugatory work in that regard, a logical step was to await the outcome of that executive process before moving forward on those particular matters, and you will be aware that agreement is still outstanding. There's also been recent commentary around bringing forward an independent EPA by other means, including a proposed amendment to the Financial Provisions Bill. However, as I'm sure you will appreciate, we're not in a position to comment on those matters or the executive paper itself. On to the recommendations. However, whilst the bulk of recommendations are linked to the establishment of an independent EPA, we have been considering within the department the wider recommendations that fall within the direct control of DAERA, noting where elements align with existing programmes of work. This includes ongoing activity to improve transparency around environmental information and to strengthen internal systems and processes. The department has carried out a summary assessment of the recommendations as detailed in the written briefing previously provided, and setting aside the 15 recommendations that are linked directly or indirectly to establishing an independent EPA, and one which is a matter for the Assembly to consider, the summary position of the remaining 16 panel recommendations are as follows. 17 recommendations have been classified as green on the basis that they can be progressed in full, for example under the NIEA Operational Review Programme, the NIEA Planning Improvement Plan, or the Fisheries and Water Environment Bill. 18 recommendations are considered amber, and those would be partially implemented or under active consideration. Further assessment is required to outline how far these recommendations can be progressed and to address the core findings of the independent review. One recommendation is considered as red status, as not currently resourced, and would therefore not be progressed as a standalone action at this stage. To give some of the specifics around the actions being progressed, these include a phased approach being taken to provide clearer signposting of key Northern Ireland environmental legislation online, starting with priority instruments and expanding subject to feasibility. NIEA are seeking to recruit additional resources to fill vacancies later this year, with competitions already up and running. Sanctions for water pollution incidents in Northern Ireland are being taken forward under the Fisheries and Water Environment Bill. The Nature Recovery Strategy for Northern Ireland is currently out for consultation. Statutory consultation will be taken forward under the new NIEA Planning Improvement Plan, and a proposal on SORPI arrangements will be brought to the Executive in the short time ahead. So in conclusion, while we wait the decision from the Northern Ireland Executive on the independent EPA, there does remain a body of work that officials are progressing through several parallel work streams. So we are now happy to take your questions. However, as outlined earlier, progress of the executive paper cannot be discussed at this stage.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So I'm going to kick things off, members, if that's okay. So the paper highlights the central theme cutting across the findings, and you did speak it in, Shane, regarding the establishment of an independent environmental protection agency. 15 out of the 32 recommendations are linked directly or indirectly to establishing the EPA. What has been the impact on environmental governance, if there is one, of the failure to reach executive agreement on that point?
I think that's possibly hard to quantify in terms of the impact of governance. The processes still continue as is. It's just really the progress in moving forward with the independent agency and the work that would follow to scope out what that would look like hasn't progressed, but I think it would be difficult to quantify in that period what the impact would be on the governance of that.
On point 14, in regard to governance, it says the board of the new environment regulator should reflect a broad range of specialisms and expertise within and beyond DAERA. All board members should be appointed through an open competition, which is obviously in line with how they should be done. In regards to those specialisms and expertise within and beyond DAERA, is there an anticipation, or can you quantify what that might look like?
Again, that would probably form part of the policy development work that would follow the agreement in principle. So, okay. And there would, of course, be consultations around that as well.
Okay, and how will or how is DAERA measuring progress against the recommendations? Is it as is the table before us today, and is that an accurate reflection today of where things are at?
Yes, I think that is a fair reflection of where they are, but within that, I think most of them are progressing in their own work streams, so they're monitored within those rather than a central monitoring of these as such. Okay.
And it's well versed, particularly with regard to NIEA in terms of the staffing and vacancies and the difficulty in recruitment. But it's not just NIEA, there are many bodies that are facing those challenges. Is that having a direct impact then on progressing other aspects of the recommendations? Or any ongoing work in the space?
In terms of NIEA, obviously we've been carrying a large number of vacancies for a long time. In terms of progressing these recommendations, you'll see some of them where it's slower than we might like in terms of internal improvement programs, or that we just don't have the resource to do it. But what we have is our own operational review programme. It's internally focused, and we are trying to resource that as far as we can to improve both, to improve processes, to improve both our inward and outward facing work, and also to try and future-proof to some extent. But the lack of our difficulties with staffing impacts across the whole piece.
Okay. And forgive me if this is if this is a harder question for you to answer. In regard to the roles of the OEP and an EPA, can you clearly set out what the differences in terms of statutory responsibility and provision would be?
The OEP would be very different. Effectively, the OEP monitor and enforce against public bodies, including DAERA and others. So they wouldn't be effectively impacted by this. What the regulator would be carrying out the regulatory duties that currently sit within NIEA and sit within other parts of DAERA.
And those things still have to be designed and agreed in, either in scope or out of scope too, because obviously it's a suite of recommendations. But
yes, but the OEP would still say that they've effectively replaced the role of the EU Commission in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, members. Any further questions in this? Declan, do you have anything?
Thank you, Chair. One of the recommendations that's under consideration is DAERA should publish a clear map of the environmental governments and NI identifying who is responsible for what, and signposting key points of contact. And just sort of follow on Robbie was saying there, that's a good recommendation. So, where precisely, or how would the new independent EPA sit alongside the likes of NIEA?
I think it would effectively it would replace it. It wouldn't be a duplication of functions. It would effectively replace that.
Yeah. So it would replace the NIEA.
Yeah.
And then would other bodies like SES remain, or maybe that's beyond the remit of the department?
It's beyond the SES isn't a government body.
Yeah. So it's a council body. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you, John.
Sure, thank you. Chair, I think I have to start with a comment that I'm one of the vast majority of MLAs who supports the establishment of an independent environmental protection agency, as demonstrated within the last 48 hours, but we live with the reality that there are those on the executive for whom the environment and environmental improvement is not urgent, and I don't even think it's a priority. But we keep at it, and there's maybe only a year left of having to share that space there. The question I want to ask is on the issues of the two questions. The first one is the memoranda of understanding between the existing agencies, and I'm aware of the boundaries I mentioned elsewhere here between Lochs Agency and DAERA, for example, and then of course there's the transboundary issues with the border. Is there any more information you can give today on the detail of what that might look like?
Well, I suppose that would all be mapped out as part of the establishment of that new body. All those things would be looked at in that new context. So I can't really give a specific detail around that, but all those things would of course be considered, how they interact with each other, and that would form part of the work as well that mentioned earlier in terms of signposting, in terms of who does what and what responsibilities sit with whom. So that would all be captured within that piece of work.
Apologies, I probably could have defined that better. Is there a possibility those will also look at the transboundary issues and cross-jurisdictional issues within Northern Ireland, like for example between Lochs Agency and DAERA? That would all be part of that, I assume. That
would form part of that policy development, to see how they would all interact.
Okay, that's very, very helpful. And then the only other one is, are we aware of time frames currently for the Fisheries and Water Environment Bill? The committee has been and will be updated on this. So, and will all of those new structures that are taking shape be able to feed into the Water and Environment Bill and vice versa? And also, could any information on how the structures already there or those that might evolve can ensure that all of the policies come together, the fisheries policies, the agri policy, the environmental farming policies, all of those things, or will that be subject to the frameworks I mentioned there, number 3?
I suppose looking at that separately, unfortunately, I don't know the exact detail in terms of the progress of the fisheries bill. It is going through. I know they've been briefed separately on that. One of the key things around that would be the fixed penalty notice and variable monetary penalties that can be brought in for a range of offences there, and that the powers that would be brought through that bill would of course then be there to be utilised by both the current arrangement and an independent EPA if that was to be established. And then the second point in terms of how these interact, that would generally form part of any sort of policy work within the department, that we do look to see where they interact to make sure that they don't impact and cause unintended consequences elsewhere, and that they do align as best as they can.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Gareth, do you?
Yeah, just generally in terms of costs, I mean that's a significant, issue, I feel, and I mean every department's talking about costs right across the piece, and I'm just concerned in this instance about costs as well, and I'm curious just to hear what the methods and models will be in order to, if this were to come into fruition, who's paying for it ultimately.
Again, I probably can't go into massive detail around that, because that piece of work in terms of mapping out the costs would be planned to follow executive approval in principle for this if that was agreed. But however, there would be a costing exercise set out to work out, look at other models elsewhere, perhaps look at how they operate and what the cost would be. There'd also be the consideration of the cost savings as such, because NIA are currently funded and currently so it wouldn't be duplicating that. It would be, as I said, it would be replacing the functions there. So the costs currently in that area then could pass to this agency. In theory, there would be a cost saving in one area to balance in some way the additional costs in others.
And NIA, of course, recovers a portion of its costs as well.
I suppose in terms of, is it the case that is it just somebody else then marking the department's homework as a result of all this? Is that ultimately the outworkings of it, in your estimation?
No, I think the role in terms of holding the department to account sits with the OEP and would continue to sit with the OEP. So this would be more around focusing on the regulatory function, that function that would probably sit within NIA. That's probably a fair assessment of it.
Yeah, Chair, but surely, just to follow on from that, surely, and bringing forward something, or proposing to bring forward something like this, you should be able to do a costing on it prior to bringing something like this into place. It's like putting something in place, and then whatever it's going to cost, well, it's going to cost. I mean, we need to have a costing prior to bringing something like this forward.
I do understand that, and I think the approach taken was to seek that agreement in principle first, and then, because there would be quite a lot of work involved in setting out what this would look like and what the costs associated would be, and then that would be taken forward, what the funding mechanisms would be for that. All those things would have to be considered and then presented. So the approach is going forward to seek that agreement in principle, then to carry out that work, and then it would be brought forward a fully developed policy with fully mapped out costing arrangements and considerations for where that funding would come from as well.
Yeah, again, that's like walking blindly into something, because what you're looking the principle of setting this thing up, then you start to do all the work, and then it's coming into fruition. But again, we're still not sure, don't know how much it's going to cost, don't know where the money's going to be coming from. It's really not sensible going forward on that ground, and it should be able to put a costing in place, or near to what it's going to cost to deliver this. How many people's going to be involved in it? And what is it going to deliver, what NIE is not delivering? Is NIE going to be done away with? Is this going to be a new body coming in to do away with NIE? All of those issues, and how can you take something forward or expect the committee to scrutinise something that we don't even know anything about?
Well, I think that scrutiny period would come at the second stage of this. If the agreement in principle was there, all that work would happen to map that out and set that out clearly, and then that would be brought forward for scrutiny by the committee and by the executive then at that point.
Yeah, but the big issue is the cost, and surely we should know something about cost before we take a step forward into that. I mean, if you were going to buy a car, you're not going to go and purchase a car and then ask the man about the price of it whenever you have it. You know, you're going to know what the price is before you purchase it, and it's the same issue. We're going to need to know what the cost is before we go step forward in this issue.
But I don't think the agreement in principle wouldn't be committing to anything that would incur costs. Those costs could be monitored and considered at that second stage before any commitment in terms of actually bringing this forward in its entirety would be made. So it's just that first step. Then all the work would happen, and then there would be time for that scrutiny to understand the costs, because the costs obviously will be dictated by just what the structure will look like. There'll be policy development required around that, there'll be consultation required around that, and then that will inform the costs themselves. Then they will come forward for scrutiny, and then there will be an opportunity for, as I said, yourselves in the committee and the executive to look at it at that point, and rather to go forward or not.
Will this replace NIEA? Will they be gone?
Yes, it would replace NIA. It would take on their regulatory functions
In its entirety. NIA would totally gone, and this is replacing it. Is that right?
I think there would need to be a bit of work about the boundaries between NIEA and the department, and that's recommended within the report, that there would need to be just a check about, you know, are there some bits that are currently sitting in the department that should sit in an independent agency, and vice versa? Are there bits in NIEA that should be sitting in the department? So that's one of the recommendations within the report. So I think that would need to take place as a kind of step if the executive were to agree in principle to start moving forward with this.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
John, the committee just has a couple of points.
Chair, one point and one quick question for clarification purposes. The point is, it's probably useful to reflect, bearing in mind that all concerns of creation of new agencies and the resources involved can be genuine, and I'm not disputing that. It's probably worthwhile reflecting while we're on record that the creation now of such an agency would not be massively different than the creation of NIA itself in terms of structures, resources, finding people, finding expertise, and the creation of NIA was done under the direction of a former minister, I believe it was Arlene Foster, for example, and that came from an existing business directorate of the then DARD. So the two situations are not unlike. The question I have is in relation to NIA itself. Can you confirm there seemed to be some confusion amongst members in the chamber during a debate the other night that NIA is not a quango? It is actually an executive agency within DAERA. Can you confirm that? Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Aoife.
Yeah, I hear that word a lot. Quango, I've heard it this week more than I ever have heard in my life. Anyway, look, given that the independent regulator is not been established, what safeguards are currently in place to ensure environmental enforcement remains robust and independent, if there is any?
Well, you can go into more detail. It effectively is the NIA in their current role. Carry that out.
Yeah, the NIEA in its current role is the regulator. It is obviously answerable to the Assembly through the Minister. It's also, DAERA is, like all public bodies, is scrutinised by the OEP as well. So that's the accountability chain at the moment.
Okay. And the department, I'm sure, accepts that the absence of an independent regulator risks undermining public confidence in environmental enforcement.
In terms of public confidence, that's one of the things that the panel set out in their recommendation as one of the key things that they would see from independence, that it would create that confidence. So that is within the recommendations. Yes.
Yeah, and I would go to say that we absolutely have to build confidence here, because we have seen the difficulty that we've had in the past with NIEA and the lack of performance there. So an independent environmental protection agency surely should be robust and independent to be able to have greater environmental accountability. And just lastly, how does environmental governance here compare with the jurisdictions like the south of Ireland or Scotland that have strengthened independent oversight?
Yes, I have some detail on all of those scenarios I can give you. In terms of the issue in the Irish Environmental Protection Agency, that's been established as an independent public body since 1992, and of course, as a member of the EU, the environmental oversight is provided through the EU Commission. Mm-hmm. Within Wales, their environmental regulator is Natural Resources Wales, and they're a Welsh government-sponsored body, a non-departmental public body, and they're ostensibly independent, but are directly funded by the Welsh Government, and they receive some direction from it in the form of a remit letter for each government term. And this is intended to ensure that the environmental priorities of Welsh Government and NRW are aligned. And its remit is actually broader than NIEA and includes flood risk, defence, forestry and fisheries. For Scotland, they have SEPA, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. It describes itself as a non-departmental public body of the Scottish Government, accountable to Scottish ministers and the Scottish Parliament, and an independent advisor on the environment. And then for England, primary responsibility is also rests with the Environmental Protection Agency since 1996, and again it's ostensibly independent of government, but the DEFRA Secretary of State has the power to issue guidance to the across its functions, and the is subject to ministerial direction under the environmental permitting regulations.
So in actual fact, we would be aligning ourselves with what they have in place. And just in terms, and I know said that was my last question, but this is my last question, just in terms of what you have said there, the fact that we don't have the IEPA in place and essentially is being blocked, and they do. What is the difference? Like, is there a vast difference in terms of what the measures that they have in place to protect natural environment to what we have? Is there a massive difference currently as it stands?
Yeah. There's not a huge difference because we're mostly still working on the old EU framework. Mm-hmm. So we've mostly taken our powers and built our structures from the old EU requirements and from the directives.
Thank you.
Members content? Yep. Gareth?
Yeah, it was just on some of the recommendations. You see, number one there, DAERA should publish a clear map of environmental governance in Northern Ireland, and I understand, and I could be wrong, but the status of that is ongoing, I would imagine, in terms of that recommendation. I'm just curious as to why that map doesn't exist already. Why would that, why wouldn't there be a clear, map of governance in terms of, the policies and procedures that you guys should be over, if you know what I mean? It just seems bizarre that wouldn't already exist.
Yeah, I think the problem is it exists, but it exists in bits in different places. So this recommendation is about bringing together a single map so that people can look at. It's not just a single map, it's a single map that is easily interpretable by the public, because at the moment the statute book is that single map. But obviously if you're a member of the public, you don't want to be going through all of the statute. You want something that's quite simple and says, if I want to talk to somebody about water pollution, this is who I talk to. If I want to talk to somebody about damage to that ASSI, that's who I talk to. So this is really aimed at trying to improve our communication with the public, and certainly the bit that NIEA is working on at the moment. It's confined to our functions at the moment, but it will be built in such a form that other people will be able to attach around it, and that will hopefully give a map across the piece. So it won't just be what NIEA does, it will be, for example, what the Lochs Agency does, what Derricor does in terms of marine and fisheries, what Northern Ireland Water does, and it will just make it easier for people to see who is responsible.
What's your opinion in terms of why that doesn't already exist? Is there a particular point that you could make that would convince me or explain to me why it doesn't exist? Because I feel it should exist, because we're here to serve the public. It is a public-facing organisation.
It should
Surely
exist.
It should exist.
It should exist, definitely, which is why we're now working on it, but it's happenstance. You have a number of different organisations, and it takes working together to provide a single map.
What has prevented that working together piece, in your opinion?
I honestly can't give you specifics, other than I suspect that there have just been issues with different organisations having different priorities.
Yeah, I think it illustrates one of the ongoing questions in regard to every issue that we have in here. To be fair, I think it's a good point. It doesn't require EPA necessarily to give us that high-level infographic, if you like, for where people want and need that. That'd be something we could probably return to, Gareth. I think it's an ongoing piece. Any other questions, members? Okay. Thank you very much. I think you got off late because there was a debate on it this week that you might have picked up on in the chamber.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, members. Okay, members, I'm going to move on to agenda item 8, which is the SL1, the Climate Change Just Transition Commission Regulations Northern Ireland 2026 Departmental Evidence Session. So members are going to refer you to the following papers: the SL1 Clerk's Scrutiny Memo, page 528, SL1 letter dated the 5th of February, page 533, draft SR and then explanatory memorandum, page 540, regulatory impact statement at page 553, and the correspondence from the Minister dated the 2nd of February. 574. So members, the department submitted the SL1 and the draft SR to the committee on the 5th of February of this year to advise of the intention to make new regulations which will establish an advisory NDPB to be known as the Just Transition Commission. At our meeting on the 12th of February, the committee agreed to publish the department's papers, issue a call for views using the Citizen Space platform, and publicise the calls for views on the committee's social media. The committee also agreed to receive an oral briefing from departmental officials today. Members, as we noted last week, our Citizen Space survey closed on the 26th of February with a total of 8 responses submitted. An additional written submission was also received, and all responses have been included in your pack from pages 576 to 589. We agreed last week to be briefed by officials today and decide if we are content to make a decision on the SR. I now welcome the following officials to brief the committee. So we have Jane Corduroy, Director of Climate Change Legislation Policy Division. We have John Early, Deputy Director of Climate Change Legislation Policy Division, and Ian Fleming, who's Grade 7, Head of Carbon Budgets and Just Transition Commission Regulations Branch. Thank you so much for attending today, and please feel free to brief the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to brief you today on the draft Climate Change Just Transition Commission Regulations 2026. The regulations are being brought forward under Section 37 of the Climate Change Act Northern Ireland 2022, which requires that DAERA establish an independent Just Transition Commission for Northern Ireland. The Climate Change Act The Climate Change Act is very clear on the specific role and functions of the Commission. The Act provides the Commission will have 2 key statutory functions that are set out in Section 37. Firstly, that the Commission will undertake an oversight role to oversee the implementation of the Just Transition elements of the Act by all departments. The Just Transition elements include the climate action plans, sectoral plans produced by departments, the Just Transition Fund for Agriculture, and soil and biodiversity targets. And secondly, the Commission will have an advisory role to provide advice to all departments on how to ensure their emissions reduction policies and proposals required under the Act comply with the Just Transition Principle. The Just Transition Principle is set out in Section 30 of the Act as the importance in taking action to reduce Northern Ireland emissions and increase Northern Ireland removals, doing so in a manner which, so far as possible, achieves the 11 specified Just Transition objectives. In general terms, the Just Transition Principle aims to promote fairness during the transition from a high emission to a low emission economy. It is about ensuring that no one, whether workers, communities, sectors and vulnerable groups or regions, are left behind as economies decarbonise. In the interest of time, I won't detail each of the 11 Just Transition objectives, but the they emphasise decent work opportunities, supporting affected communities and reducing inequality during the transition. To ensure broad representation and to assist it in performing its advisory and oversight functions, the Act mandates as a minimum that there should be representation on the Commission from 7 sectors. These are academia, agriculture, civic society, environmental groups, fisheries, trade unions and youth groups. And membership can be expanded beyond these. In developing the policy proposals to establish the Commission, we considered international examples of the interventions in just transition, the provision of equality and human rights here and existing statutory bodies to ensure that there was no overlap or duplication, and we considered how the Commission, once established, would work with existing bodies to ensure the most effective and efficient use of resources. We also looked at the Just Transition Commissions in Scotland and Ireland, and we are actively engaged with our counterparts there, both on the commissions themselves and also the sponsoring departments, to learn from their experiences. This engagement has proved invaluable into how the Commission will work in practice and lessons which we have taken on board in the development of these draft regulations. The Department recognises the high level of interest in just transition and in turn in the role of the Commission in delivering it. The Act does not require a statutory consultation on the draft regulations. However, the Department considered it important to engage with stakeholders and the public on the proposed approach to establishing the Commission. A 10-week public consultation sought views on the key policy proposals, including potential additional sectoral representation, and a draft set of illustrative regulations were provided alongside that policy consultation. During the consultation, there were 12 consultation engagement events with organisations and interested parties, including those sectors and groups mandated to be represented by the Act. So that included the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, the Agricultural Policy Stakeholder Group, the Rural Stakeholder Forum, the Rural Community Network, and youth groups including the Youth Assembly, the Children's Commissioner and the Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster. We also met with the Utility Regulator, the Northern Ireland Consumer Council, the OEP and the All-Party Group on Climate Change. And we engaged in public stakeholder meetings hosted by Climate NI, by Queen's University Belfast and by the Northern Ireland Environment Link. It was an incredibly positive and well-engaged consultation. We received 100 responses to the consultation, including 83 from organisations, with overwhelming support for the establishment of the Commission and majority support for every one of the policy proposals. Over 77% of respondents also provided additional input and comments, and as a result, the consultation produced a wealth of ideas, suggestions and recommendations. Many of these we have taken on and incorporated into the regulations. Others will inform the governance documents and the recruitment process. And we are also including many of these as part of the induction and handover report for the Commission once members are in post. On the 13th of May, we provided the committee with a copy of the summary of responses. I'll just touch on 2 of the things. 83% agreed the Commission being formed as an advisory non-departmental public body. 82% agreed membership should be between 7 and 20. The consultation also sought views on 3 additional sectors represented in the Commission, given their sectoral emission profile and or the key role they would play in decarbonisation. The sectors we sought views on were energy, transport and green finance. There was strong support for all 3, with 92% support for transport representative, 85% support for energy representative and 75% support for green finance. The green finance sector was seen as a key enabling sector to the work of the Commission. In addition to the 3 sectors, respondents also suggested other sectors for inclusion on the Commission. The most highly supportive of these were the built environment, including housing, construction, planning and buildings. There was also a really strong thread through the consultation responses and at the events that there should be a dedicated rural representative distinct from and in addition to the agricultural sector mandated by the Act. There was also recognition from some of the respondents that more than one representative may be required for some sectors due to their size and diversity. So based on this feedback, 2 members have been provided for in the draft regulations for the environmental sector, and also given the remit of the Commission that there should be 3 members for the agricultural sector. We've continued to update stakeholders as the regulations are progressing through the scrutiny process, and feedback has remained positive, reflecting the strong support demonstrated through the consultation. As required by Section 56(2) of the Climate Change Act, DERA sought the advice of the UK Climate Change Committee. The CCC published their advice on 2nd of June 2025, and they welcomed the development of the draft regulations and were supportive of the Northern Ireland Executive establishing a commission that would be able to support government in our decarbonisation journey. The CCC's advice has been addressed through the draft regulations and the accompanying explanatory memorandum, or will be addressed through non-legislative documents such as the terms of reference or other operating procedural documents. The regulations have therefore been developed to ensure the requirements specified in the Act are fully taken on board, fully captured, and we have taken on board feedback received through the public consultation, engagement with colleagues in Scotland and Ireland, and the views of the Climate Change Committee. Whilst ensuring through the regulations that the Commission has the requisite powers and membership to function effectively and deliver its statutory duties across all government departments, we have also sought, given public finance constraints, to keep costs low in areas where that is possible. Alongside the regulations, you've been provided with the Regulatory Impact Assessment, which details and assesses the costs and benefits of the Commission. To support the work of the Commission, DAERA have also secured funding for a small secretariat team who will support the Commission in carrying out its functions and in engaging with departments and the public. Although the Commission will be providing a service to all departments, DAERA will supply the necessary core funding required to maintain the Commission's functions. In addition to the RIA, we have also completed equality screening, a child's rights impact assessment and a rural needs impact assessment. Each of the assessments found no adverse impact and showed an overall positive impact. The draft regulations provide the Commission will be an independent advisory NDPB. They bring the recommended sectoral representation on the Commission to 16 members covering 12 sectors and include a non-sectoral chairperson. The maximum number of members is restricted to 20 to ensure decision making is not hindered unnecessarily, something that was raised by the CCC in their advice. There is provision for the Commission to have the power to establish ad hoc working groups or committees should the Commission require additional specific knowledge or expertise. And that proposal in the consultation was supported by 95% of consultees. These committees, which we would expect to be time-bound and focused on specific tasks, would report back to the Commission, who would maintain overall control of the advice they provide. In addition, the Commission has the power to request information from public bodies to enable the Commission to fulfil its duties. And to ensure that the work of the Commission is transparent and accessible, there is a requirement for any oversight report produced by the Commission to be laid before the Northern Ireland Assembly. In addition, on an annual basis, the Commission will report on its own performance, and these reports will also be laid in the Assembly. Standard provisions are also included, such as tenure, remuneration, procedures and conflict of interest. It's envisaged the Commission will engage with and collaborate with other bodies, such as the Office for Environmental Protection and the UK Climate Change Committee. The next stage in the process is to lay the draft regulations in the Assembly under the draft affirmative procedure for their debate and approval. And subject to the Assembly agreement, once the regulations are in place, a recruitment exercise to appoint a chair and members to the Commission will be able to commence in accordance with the Code of Practice issued by the Commissioner for Public Appointments for Northern Ireland. The delivery of these regulations will be a positive step forward in meeting our statutory requirements of the Climate Change Act 2022. The Commission will play a key advisory and oversight role across all departments, which will help to ensure that what we do to reduce emissions and how we do it is fair and inclusive and does not leave anyone behind. Thank you very much for taking the time for us to brief you today, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That was quite in depth. Thank you. So, can I just get the ball rolling then? How will the department ensure that perspectives from sectors that have been highlighted to us are included in shaping the just transition? For instance, groups I'm referring to are like those from the political economy, the wellbeing economy, educational development, advocacy, and faith groups as well. And I'm also aware that there's been a bit of a shift in the EU in regard to a much more region-specific attitude towards a just transition body would then be empowered to look at rather than the collective, if that's fair.
I think in terms of the response received, and I think those are incredibly interesting concepts about well-being and donut economics that I expect the Commission will be very interested in. And we do know, we can't prescribe that in the regulations, but we do know that the Just Transition Commission in the South were up in Queen's recently hearing about the well-being economy. So we would expect our Commission to have an equal interest in that, and we would probably facilitate and include that in our induction to them. In terms of how the Commission engages, it's an independent body, so I can't tell it how to engage, but I know based on what's happening in Scotland and Ireland that engagement is a really big part of what they've been doing, and place-based approach and a regional approach is also a big part of what they've been doing. So the Secretariat team that we have put in place will be involved in assisting the Commission to go out and meet people and listen to people and engage and have a communication plan.
Given that the bodies that exist and some bodies that potentially may be set up in regards to like the EPA, and we've got the OEP, and we've got all these bodies, and we're like looking at a just transition at the very highest level, what do you assess the priorities of the just transition body to be? Is it to complement those environmental decarbonisation and emission pressures, or is it actually to act as a barometer of fairness for and reflect better Northern Ireland's unique position? For instance, its reliance, unfortunately, on fossil fuels for energy and the lack of work in that space to actually decarbonise that sector, and the fact that we're kind of reliant on all of those things. And you see the geopolitics playing out now with fuel costs. Do you see the body then being as something as a barrier to protect the fairness in the approach, or is it to facilitate further the ambition for net zero and climate ambitions?
Sorry, that's a big question there.
Yeah.
So
You're making me sound like Ron Burgundy here.
The statutory remit of the Commission is very focused. So it has the advisory role and an oversight role, and its focus is specifically on the Climate Action Plan, the sectoral plans, the soil and biodiversity targets, and the Just Transition Fund for Agriculture. So very focused. So what we did is we looked at the landscape of what exists already, because if you're creating a new body, it's really important there's no overlap or duplication. So it has a very distinct focus that none of the other bodies have. That we would expect it to work very closely with those other bodies, and we envisage a memorandum of understanding, between the OEP and the Climate Change Committee and the Just Transition Commission, in the way that the OEP has with the Climate Change Commission at the moment. Can
I just jump in? I'll tell you, this raises an issue with me. We had the OEP in before, and the OEP have a very fixed agenda, and they're open and they were very nice about this. Their agenda is the environment, and what they said to us, because we've obviously take the rural prosperity, the well-being, the jobs and the sectors that Northern Ireland relies on. But the OEP were quite adamant that their single priority was environmental improvement, and it was up to government and politicians to find the solutions. What I'm trying to probably fashion out is, does the just transition, is it more flexible, and does it allow for that regional approach and Northern Ireland specific issues, pressures, and particularly the fact that we have a very rural makeup? Yeah.
Absolutely, that's its purpose. Yeah, it's absolutely focused on fairness, and that came out in the consultation, and it came out from the CCC that the priority for the Commission is just transition above everything else. And I think the feedback from the consultation about having rural communities was exactly that point about how reliant, especially people west of the Bann, are on oil, and the very specific challenges that we have in Northern Ireland. So it is very Northern Ireland focused, but also probably within regions within Northern Ireland. And we could see we had quite a lot of responses from councils saying, there's different sort of challenges we face in different council areas, and I would see a very good connection between councils and the Commission in terms of looking at specific kind of regional issues.
Okay.
I think I was just going to add there, I think that will never come to recruitment. Never would do the appointment process. We want people to have a good understanding of just transition and the actual impacts in Northern Ireland and how they maybe differ from the rest of the UK. So I think that will be ironed out when it comes to the appointment process. It will get the right people appointed.
I know I'm very early to suggest this, and I could see potential where agencies nearly butt. So if you have the CCC, the OEP leaning in terms of the obligations and priorities, but the just transition, are there instances that are foreseen where the just transition, where would they act in the space of the Northern Ireland specific conundrum with regard to meeting the targets, but also the wider priorities that we have for prosperity, job creation, and also protecting maybe our elderly communities or disabled communities who need services in rural areas and are entitled to those, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be working with departments, so departments are going to be coming up with the policies, and obviously as departments we'll be looking at equality and human rights and rural needs impact assessment and child's right, all of those Section 75 groups anyway in the policy development. But I think where the Just Transition Commission comes in is it's looking at fairness overall and can advise departments, and then because of that broad sectoral representation on the Commission and those voices, and the balance of those voices, across all of the sectors, including, I think, specifically the youth group voice is quite important. In relation to that, we sort of see the Commission having a unique role. Actually, what we found is departments have really welcomed the idea of having a Commission, and that you would have this independent advisory body outside of them to offer them advice and to give them insights into what different sectors and groups will be considered. I mean, it's worth saying that OEP is a regulatory body with specific regulatory powers. This is not a regulatory body, it's an advisory body. So that, you know, so you might find our advisory body and Just Transition Commission refers things to the OEP potentially, or vice versa. But do you just want to add anything more to that?
I think as James mentioned, so the OEP and the Climate Change Committee have an existing MOU in place. That's very much about cooperation, prevention, duplication of effort between them. We would see that as a model that's worked well so far. So we would see that as a sort of expansion to make sure that there's a communication chain between them. The Secretariat team within DAERA would help us facilitate those introductions, but we do see it as well that whenever the Commission's established, day one, there's going to be different levels of awareness within the Commission members when they're appointed. So there will be that sort of initial training exercise bringing through. That'll be everything from Section 75 training, general awareness, and very much help and facilitate to enable them to perform their functions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, Declan, do you want to
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation. See the Just Transition Fund for Agriculture, would that be over and above the schemes that the Minister is currently announcing, or the Sustainable Agricultural Fund? And
pick up that one for you. So I think it's so the maybe just for transparency, that particular piece of regulation that we're bringing forward to Just Transition Fund sits in a different team from ourselves. So we can relay the sort of information we have, but it doesn't sit with us to bring forward. So this current financial year, there was an allocation of 12.3 million of capital funding to that, and that to support schemes like the sustainable utilisation of slurry, bovine genetic improvements and farming and carbon projects. As part of the draft budget, there's been funding of £36 million has been allocated for that fund, and I know colleagues working in that area are currently obviously developing and bringing forward the regulations and that. I do understand that officials in that area do plan to brief the committee on that in the coming time on the development of that fund in the next couple of months. Honestly, they're probably in a much better position to provide you for further detail around that specifically.
And is the Commission time bound?
Our Commission? No.
Just Transition Commission?
No, so the appointments will be time bound. So the appointments will be done in line with the Commissioner for Public Appointments NI guidance, and they'll serve terms. So they can either serve a 3-year term or a 5-year term. We would probably envisage the chair would be a 5-year term and members may be 3 years. There is the option though for extensions in that. And then in line with the public appointments process, they can serve a second term up to a maximum of 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Gareth?
Yeah, I'd just be keen just in terms of a sort of, I suppose, a live issue at the minute and just a walkthrough of what you would imagine the Commission would do or facilitate. And I know at the minute there's a consultation due to close shortly on wood burning stoves, solid fuel burning, and I suppose it's in a bid to reduce air pollution. And I'm just curious, you know, how would you see the Commission's remit in that process? Because the consultation, as it reads, its idea is setting out stricter emission limits for new stoves, introducing tougher smoke emission standards, mandatory labelling for stoves and fuels, increased enforcement penalties. So, you know, the consultation by its merit is proposing a number of measures. Those would obviously have impacts if the consultation and its results and ultimately any changes were brought through. That would have an impact on manufacturers, it would have an impact on retailers. Economically, it would also then have an impact on rural dwellers who rely on that form of heating. They maybe have a system in place that's linked to their heating system. There would be obviously expense in terms, you know, if this was retrospective and ripping out and reinstalling, so it would be huge, you know, there would be significant ramifications for that. And I'm just curious, you know, in that regard, as a real, you know, live example, how would you see what's the transition in real terms looking like in that regard? How does it play out?
I think it's important to say that there's the role the Just Transition Commission will have, but there's also the Just Transition requirements are placed on departments as well. So departments have to adhere to that Just Transition principle and the objectives. So departments will be, like you'll know that the Warm Home Scheme mentioned Just Transition recently because it's obviously thinking about that as well. But so there'll be the role the departments have and then the role the Commission will have. So the Commission may gather evidence, may make recommendations to that department, or like our department, so to any department that was bringing forward a policy, and make representation from the various members with the expertise that they bring to the Commission. I know the Climate Action Plan and subsequent Climate Action Plans will look at their policies through a just transition lens as well, and they'll be included. Like, it's worth saying, I suppose, that some of the issues you're mentioning about rural will be captured in rural needs impact assessment and equality impact assessment, but the Commission would be looking at the fairness of it overall.
Were they, say that plays out and there's recommendations, are they, would you have a situation where the Commission would say, well, here's our view, and then obviously the Assembly would be seriously considering what the Commission says and would be foolish to ignore it? Is that what you envisage it?
Yeah, it's like a soft power, because they bring in their expertise where they're saying about just transition, and then departments will be required to address, I think, what are they doing in response to what the Just Transition Commission has said in relation to those things.
While this consultation's ongoing, do you see the Commission then doing their own pieces of work around that, separate from, because I know in this place consultations aren't the hottest ticket in town. When you're dealing with citizen space and those types of platforms, they're not inviting to the public, and we see times and occasions where 8 people have responded, and a change is made as a result of that, which I think isn't particularly helpful or useful. So do you see the Just Transition Commission having a bit of weight in that regard to go out of its own accord and seek views and formulate its own opinions, or are these very much grabbed from the available net that has been cast out?
It's a wee bit difficult to say because it's an independent body and it's how it will envisage doing these things, but I would have thought, looking at what's happening in Scotland and Ireland, they have done that. They have done a lot of engagement, a lot of consultation, and then they've also brought in experts to brief them on particular issues. Like obviously in Scotland they've looked at oil production and what they're doing with that, and they're looking at transport. In the south they're looking at transport and they're looking at agriculture, given their emissions profile. So what you've outlined is how I would envisage it, but this is going to be an independent body, and it's how they want to tackle things. They will have quite a lot to look at once they're in post in relation to the first Climate Action Plan and the sectoral plans. So
the other point is, so the advice that the Commission produce is obviously going to be laid in the Assembly. It will be publicly available. So in situations where officials are bringing forward those policies proposals to a committee like yourselves, you'll have access to the views and advice that have came from the Commission, and you'll be able to obviously scrutinise and ask officials, well, how have you taken account of this advice? What amendments? How have you adjusted, put it in? So that that sort of added form of transparency around the process to make sure that their advice is being taken account of, and if, as officials we can demonstrate how that's been carried through into the policy.
Thank you, Gareth. Aoife.
I think my question's been answered, so I think you're off the hook. Thank you very much. I appreciate your briefing today. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Chair, some of the ground that I would have asked Council has been covered, but I'm going to ask you a different question in the hope that we might see or hear some good news. And I hope no one takes it wrong when I make this observation, Chair, that Thursday mornings at committee are not always exactly overbrimming with positivity, and officials could be forgiven for not feeling the love quite often. But surely there is a positive story in this one. Is it not the case, as demonstrated from the consultations and the wider engagement, that sectors plural, including the agri-food sector, were very keen to get this up and running and very keen to be involved, and may have asked for additional spaces so that they can be represented and fully engaged? Isn't that the case?
absolutely, it was one of the most positive consultations I've ever been involved in. Just Transition gets mentioned at every single event and stakeholder engagement we've done on climate. Every single one. It's really important because people, fundamentally, fairness really chimes with people. And what we know is that, I suppose in relation to your point, was there's research that the department has considered where it says people are happy with emissions reduction policies as long, even if they're paying a wee bit more, as long as they know that it's fair and it's being applied fairly. So it really, really resonates with people. And I mean, we have done another consultation separately, which was nothing to do with the Just Transition, and I think a sixth of responses to that said, and we're really keen to see the Just Transition Commission set up. You know, so it's a really, really big positive thing, and right across every sector, across sectors, across the, I suppose, what you call the voluntary community sector. You know, gender organisations responded to this, disability organisations responded, Old People Commission responded. You know, when I look through the, you know, we've said that 87% of people are in favour, but when you actually look through the 100 responses, I think there's only 2 that aren't in favour. You know, it's a really, really positive thing. People want to see that set up and they want to see it working effectively, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do, to give the Commission as much information as possible so that it hits the ground running, because it has to be effective quite quickly.
Chair, I made that, if I could just come back very briefly, and apologies, we'll have to leave soon, but I made that comment about positivity very deliberately, because I've sensed positivity amongst the sectors on this one. An additional question, if I may. I recently asked, and this is crucial to progressing some of this policy and making change and lessening dependency on fossil fuels for an abundance of reasons: costs, environment, energy security, and others. But how well will the departments work together on this? I mean, questions on, for example, skills around new green technologies for heating our homes would be the responsibility for the Department for Economy. So how will all of that feed into the transition, and how will they interact with the other departments that will have responsibilities beyond DAERA?
I mean, it is worth saying the departments work very well together on this. I'm sure you're aware, there's a strategic oversight group which has membership at grade 3 level from all departments, chaired by our permanent secretary, and there's a sectoral and departmental leads group underneath that, which is at my level, which is represented from every department, and we meet at least monthly on it. This was really, really good communication. We are also involving the departments when we get to if we get the public appointments process, in terms of the sort of skills that the Commission, because somebody in energy will have a more insight into what is important for energy, and the same with you know, agriculture colleagues and with transport colleagues in relation to that. The Secretariat are officials within my team, so they know how the civil service works and they know how to engage with departments, and I think that will be really supportive for the Independent Commission as well in how they interact with departments.
A variety of issues. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Tom?
Thank you, Chair. You talk about a 14-member committee or commission and no more than 20 in that. Is there any assurances that can be given that there will be members from the agricultural sector on that commission?
Absolutely. So the legislation prescribes that there will be 3 agricultural representatives on the commission.
Okay, so there will be 3 members from agriculture. It also talks about the committee having powers, you know, to look at setting up ad hoc working groups. Would that be all from within the 14 or 20 member committee that's there, or are you bringing on somebody from outside as well into these ad hoc?
That came out very strongly supported in the consultation. So what it was, where people said sometimes the committee might be looking at a particular issue where they need other expertise or other knowledge, so they can set up these working groups that are short-term things where they bring other people in relation to that. Now, somebody on the commission will still be required to be on that consultation or working group and then feed that back to the Commission. The Commission will still have the authority and decision-making role in relation to the advice they provide, but it just means that they can get expertise on a particular issue if they need. You want to say?
Yeah, so I think it's fair. So if you're the representative on the Commission for, say, agricultural sector, in this case 3, and you're given a series of documentation to be reviewed, and you're sort of saying, okay, we need to go off and get additional advice and expertise, those ad hoc committees that will be established will allow them to bring in additional representation from the wider sector into that. The committee member would sit on that ad hoc group as the representation. They would consult with that wider group, then they would bring the sort of wider representation views back to the main committee, who would obviously ratify the advice that comes back to the department then. So it all funnels back through the single route.
Would the ad hoc committee be operating on a voluntary basis, or would that be adding further cost to what's already the committee's going to cost?
The regulations allow for payment if it's appropriate, you know, but again, we want to get value for money, you know, and I think even that's what something came out in when we look at the Scottish Commission, is even some people, members sitting on the Scottish Commission on a full-time basis and don't take payment because it's like their extension of their sort of main job. So we think ad hoc committees would work similar. We would hope that some people would come there and give their advice because it's the right thing for the sector and it's part of their role and part of their job and their main activity. But there is a power to pay if there's payment needed.
And the Commission is also able to call experts to give expert advice. So that was one of the things that came from our engagement with Consumer Council. That consumers should be central to the transition and making it fair. So Consumer Council can go and give advice to the Commission and or other expertise as they require.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, members, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, members, so following on from what we've heard today, and bearing in mind that the SL1 stage is the last opportunity for the committee to influence the policy approach, are members content that we have sufficient information to make a formal decision on that SR? Other options is to take any other stakeholder advice, or does the committee agree that, subject to the department addressing any further issues identified, it would be content to support the SR? Members content to support the SR? Yes. Thank you. We're content to support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, as the procedures draft affirmative, there will be a debate in plenary. Are you content that the committee supports the SR as drafted in the debate? Thank you, members. Okay. Members, agenda item 9 then is the SL1 mandatory use of closed circuit television slaughterhouse regulations 2026, the outcome of citizen space survey. So we refer you to the pack. And we have the Department's SL1 letter dated the 9th of February at page 591. The draft SR and explanatory memorandum start at page 597. The Department submitted the above SL1 and draft SR to the Committee on the 9th of February to advise of its intention to make a new regulation which will mandate the use of closed circuit television in slaughterhouses which handle live animals. At our meeting on the 19th of February, the Committee agreed to receive an oral briefing from Department officials on the 19th of March. Publish the Department's papers, issue a call for views using Citizen Space platform and publicise the call for views on the Committee's social media. Members, to date, the Citizen Space survey closed on the 4th of March with no responses submitted. Do you wish to seek any further information, or are we content to consider the proposals on the 19th of March? I am content with that approach. Members, thank you very much. Agenda item 10 is the departmental written briefing synopsis of responses and department responses to the consultation on recreational fishing for crabs, lobsters in Northern Ireland. So that's at page 608 of your pack. It's a 12-week consultation that closed on the 24th of December and it received 83 responses to 4 questions related to the recreational crab and lobster fishery, registration requirement for unlicensed recreational fishers, pot tagging requirement, catch recording arrangement, and alternative approaches to gathering data on recreational potting. DAERA states that there was no overwhelming support for the introduction of mandatory registration, pot tagging or submitting catch returns, but it has been considered a useful exercise to establish contacts with those who recreationally fish for crabs and lobsters. There will be further engagement to ask for a voluntary opt-in pilot for pot tagging and submitting catch returns for a few recreational seasons. If you have any comments, you can tend to note. Thank you, members. Agenda item 11 is a departmental written briefing on the Maboy remediation project, draft summary report, response to the public consultation on the draft remediation strategy for Maboy. So I refer you to the briefing paper starting at page 632 of the pack, and the 16-week public consultation closed on the 2nd of October and included public information events and a total of 26 written responses, which have been subject to a comprehensive technical evaluation. Summary report on responses are at Annex A, which starts at page 638 of your pack. The draft strategy is a concept design with a developed detailed design being the next step. The process was completed using land contamination risk management guidance and sets out the preferred technical solution following the completion of a remedial options appraisal to 1. Protect water quality in the River Fawn and the public drinking water supply abstracted from it. 2. To improve local groundwater quality in the Fawn groundwater body. 3. Safeguard public health. And 4. Minimise the environmental impact of illegally buried waste. Members, an independent review of the process to prepare the draft strategy was undertaken by AEO COM consultants appointed by Derry City and Strabane District Council. They found that substantial further work is needed to refine the design of the strategy, which the department states was expected given the presented draft strategy is actually just a concept design. However, the department states that NIEA's review and assessment of the responses has not yet indicated any need for fundamental changes to the appraisal of remediation techniques. Despite this, some responses have prompted NIEA to refine some details to strengthen the draft strategy and will work with its appointed integrated consultancy team to address this. NIEA now plan to publish the draft summary report to include feedback received during the consultation and to make necessary updates or amendments to the draft remediation strategy. NIEA then intends to deliver the refined draft along with an updated cost estimate for consideration and progression to the next stage of scrutiny and approval. And obviously there are ongoing legal proceedings in regard to that one as well, members. Any comments? Content to note? Thank you, members. Agenda item 12 is correspondence. Members refer to page 810 of the pack. The correspondence dated 3rd of March from Farmers for Action requesting that the Minister take action regarding the operations at AFBI. Have you any comments? Content to note? Thank you, members. Refer to pack start at page 812, a copy of the annual Drinking Water Inspector Report on Drinking Water Quality in Northern Ireland. Content to note? Thank you, members. Page 881 of the pack, correspondence dated the 4th of March. The committee has been copied into between the Chair of the House of Lords, Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee and the DEFRA regarding persistent organic pollutants. Are you content to note? And then page 883 of the pack, the Youth Assembly update. Are you content to note, members? Thank you. I refer you to page 25 table papers to the 59th ESR report. The report refers to SR 2026-14, the Bovine Genetics Genotyping Scheme, Regulations 2026, which this committee agreed to on the 12th of February, the subject to the ESR report, which has not drawn any attention to the Assembly. Okay, members need to think about this one, so I'll read it a bit slower, okay, because I do need your views on this one. So this is regard to the draft forward programme. So I'd like you to take your views on the visit to Toonbridge on the 26th of March. I will have to leave that day at 12:30, which is fine for our committee meeting, being held previously earlier than that at the Loughney Fishermen's Cooperative. However, for the afternoon visit to Enva, I am concerned that with other members having other committee commitments here in Stormont, we may be down to around four members available for that meeting, for that meeting at Enva. So, but if four is okay and people want to go ahead with that, that's fine. But if they think that that number is too low or we're less than four, what I need to assess is the availability of members for that afternoon visit. So, you've got PAC. PAC.
Michelle.
Yeah, but
Although we could, when is it?
It's on the 26th. I'm there for the committee meeting in the morning time with the cooperative, but I won't be there for the afternoon session, unfortunately. Like, Art's not going to be there.
Chair, do you want me to email members and get a confirmation?
Yeah.
Maybe just meet next week.
Do you want to just decide by correspondence? Tom, do you want to have a look at it then and just confirm by correspondence?
Yeah.
If that's all right. I know it's one that's been on the forward work programme for some time now.
Shall maybe available.
Maybe available. Well, what we'll do is we'll do an email correspondence and then we'll come back with a yes or no and then we'll determine it next week if that's okay, members. Okay, then apart from that, are you content that the forward work programme is published?
Yep.
Okay. Any other business? Okay. Date and time and place of next meeting is next Thursday, 19th of March. Well, actually, it's not. It's because we're having a meeting on Monday morning at 10 a.m. here in room 21. Okay, members? Thank you. The meeting's now adjourned.
Committee Room 21. Signed,